Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our live coverage of the latest mission from Vandenberg Space Force Base. I'm Robinson Smith, reporter with Spaceflight Now. So good to be with you on this Sunday morning here in the United States. Just a little before 10 o'clock, as SpaceX is preparing to launch a Falcon 9 rocket from the West Coast in California. Looking at a liftoff time of 7:20 a.m. Pacific, 10:20 a.m. Eastern, 14:20 UTC for our friends joining around the world. SpaceX has begun fueling its Falcon 9 rocket, which means they are locked into this current T0 that you see here on your screen. SpaceX uses a load and go style of fueling, which essentially means that they'll be tanking the rocket up to just about 2 minutes prior to liftoff. And without the ability to hold the countdown, the start of fueling means that we are on track and keyed in for liftoff of the Falcon 9 rocket at the time you see here on your screen. Our Spaceflight Now editor, Stephen Young, is going to be running the technical operations of the broadcast today. Our photography team has this mission off, as this is a West Coast venture. But of course, they'll be back in action before you know it. They're all getting prepared for upcoming big day of coverage. Of course, talking about the pending launch of 4 astronauts up to the International Space Station as part of Axiom's AX-4 mission, led by former NASA astronaut, current head of human spaceflight for Axiom Space, Peggy Whitson. Taking a quick look back here in Florida, you're taking a live look now at Launch Complex 39A, where the Falcon 9 rocket is standing tall at that historic pad. Crew access arm has been extended, and SpaceX is getting ready to conduct a static fire test a little bit later on today. We'll have a dedicated live stream for that coverage, so if you haven't already, now's a great time to hit that subscribe button, turn on notifications, and ring that bell, and that way you won't be left in the dark when we start our live coverage on that. Similar to a Vandenberg mission, our live coverage on the static fire test will begin about 30 minutes prior to ignition, once we have confirmation of fueling for the Falcon 9 rocket. We'll, of course, have much more to say about the AX-4 mission, both in the coverage for the static fire and certainly when it comes to the launch itself. It'll be a big multi-hour show leading up to liftoff, so you'll want to come back and set your alarms early for the morning of Tuesday, June 10th, as these 4 are getting ready to head to space. 3 of them for the very first time. I mentioned our photography team just a moment ago. If you're not following the fellas on X, you can find them and their social handles here. John is at John Pisani Photo. Michael Kane is at MD Kane Jr. and I'm Bernstein at ABurn NYC. And be sure to follow Spaceflight Now, simply at Spaceflight Now. We're also on Threads, Blue Sky, and Facebook. I want to thank the more than 800 of you who are watching with us live this morning. Let us know in the live chat where you're watching from. You can also help out our coverage just by clicking the like button and sharing the stream. That allows more folks to find their way to this live launch coverage, and that, my friends, would be very greatly appreciated. I also want to thank our moderators in the live chat for helping us out this morning. Rick Donner, appreciate you for being with us today. Just scrolling to see if any of the other mods are hanging around in the background. I thought I saw Jeff Hansen earlier. Might just be my eyes playing tricks. Regardless, if you do see any of the other mods cruise on into the live chat, be sure to give them a big old Spaceflight Now hello. See Isaac checking in from Mexico, Kenneth from Long Beach, California. Got Holan from Nova Scotia, Canada. Good mix of folks from around the world. Klaus from Austria, David from Smith Lake, Alabama. Good to see our international audience coming in force today. We're also powered by a wonderful channel member community here on YouTube and make these live launch opportunities possible. So thanks to folks like Adam Hart, Sue Straub, Deb Reese, The Rocket Girl, DJ Latin Man, Kenneth Urbanek, and many others. Stephen Fraser, hello to you. Channel membership comes with a number of perks, including discounts at our online shop, that is shop.spaceflightnow.com. Access to our member-only videos here on YouTube, access to our members-only Discord server, and of course, the ability to watch all of our live launch liftoff moments from here in Florida in 4K. Speaking of channel members, I want to thank Stephen Fraser for gifting 5 memberships, growing our little community here on YouTube. Much appreciated, Stephen. And to our 5 newest channel members, welcome aboard. We're glad to have you all with us. And if you haven't already, be sure to thank Stephen in the live chat. And we hope you decide to stick around with channel membership. Last little bit of housekeeping. If you have a comment or question about this mission or other goings on in the realm of space or spaceflight, you can go ahead and use the YouTube Super Chat feature to elevate your comment. And not only will you be giving us some interesting things to talk about as we cruise on through the count, but you'll be supporting what we do here at Spaceflight Now, and that, my friends, is always greatly appreciated. Taking a moment now as we're just about 22.5 minutes away from liftoff. Let's go ahead and talk about the countdown timeline, the milestones that are behind us and the ones still ahead. The go-ahead for fueling was given at the T-minus 38-minute mark, and tanking started 3 minutes after that. Fueling for the Falcon 9 rocket begins with loading liquid oxygen on board the Falcon 9's first stage, the booster, and at the same time, RP-1, which is a rocket-grade kerosene propellant that is loaded on board the first and second stages. T-minus 30 minutes is when they start loading a cryogenic helium onto the pressure vessels for the Falcon 9's booster stage. Same is true on the second stage a few minutes after that. Helium is used to pressurize the main propellant tanks during flight. T-minus 23 minutes, second stage RP-1 loading wraps up. Coming up next will be the strong back chill down process, which begins at about T-minus 20 minutes and 50 seconds. This is when SpaceX is thermally conditioning the feed lines there at the pad ahead of second stage liquid oxygen load, making sure those lines are thermally correct. Had we eyes on the Falcon 9 rocket at this point in the tanking process, we would see the so-called big vent, which will be coming up a little bit later, again out here at pad 39A for the static fire coming up this afternoon. Once this chill down sequence is concluded, second stage LOX load will begin at the 16-minute mark. And in fact, that chill down process just now getting underway in real time. Moving right along, the chill down of the 9 Merlin engines will begin at the T-minus 7-minute mark. That's when SpaceX flows a small amount of liquid oxygen through the plumbing and turbo pumps, and that helps to protect the engines from the risk of thermal shock and damage during the startup sequence. 6 minutes before flight, the first stage kerosene tank is full. Then at T-minus 4.5 minutes, we'll see the strong back retract sequence get underway. That's when the clamp arms just beneath the payload fairings will open up, and then the transporter erector, the large structure also referred to as the strong back, here at Vandenberg reclines about 13 degrees away from the Falcon 9 rocket. And once it does so, it will stay in that position up to and through liftoff. 3 minutes before takeoff, the first stage liquid oxygen tank is full. Same is true on the second stage about a minute afterwards, at which point the Falcon 9 rocket is fully loaded with 1 million pounds of propellant. In the final 60 seconds, as we hear the call that the Falcon 9 is in startup, the countdown is turned over from the ground sequencer to the Falcon 9's onboard flight computers. The tanks are brought up to flight pressure. The SpaceX launch director will give their go for launch 45 seconds before ignition. That engine ignition sequence issued at T-minus 3 seconds, and if all 9 Merlin engines are healthy and ignite, the command will be given for the hold down clamps to release the Falcon 9 rocket for a T0 liftoff. Once again, targeting 7:20 a.m. Pacific, 10:20 a.m. Eastern, 14:20 UTC, or just about 19 minutes from now. The Falcon 9 booster that is supporting today's mission is tail number B1088. So, not going to see any movement in our Falcon 9 frequent flyers list today. Here's just a brief overview of where the top boosters are for SpaceX. Of course, we won't see any movement on this with the AX4 mission either, as of now, SpaceX is only launching boosters that have flown up to, I guess now 6 times in support of a crewed mission. The Fram 2 flight, that polar orbiting mission, was the first time that a crew of astronauts has launched on a booster flying for its 6th time. So likely will be some time before we see the human spaceflight program at SpaceX get up into the 20s with a booster that's launching humans. Here's an overview of the Falcon family of rockets over the years. Today's launch will be the 70th flight of a Falcon 9 rocket so far this year. No Falcon Heavies on the schedule for the first half of 2025. If the Astrobotic Griffin 1 mission is ready in time, that would take place on a Falcon Heavy targeting the end of the year at sometime in Q4. Taking a look at where this Falcon 9 rocket is going to be flying once it leaves the pad. Talking trajectory today. Falcon 9 rocket is going to be making its ascent from Space Launch Complex 4 East. They're at Vandenberg Space Force Base. Currently the only pad that supports Falcon 9 rockets, but that will soon change if SpaceX gets its way. Currently, environmental reviews and assessments are underway for SpaceX to take over Slick 6 there at Vandenberg, and that would support both Falcon 9 and Falcon Heavy missions. Public comment for that work is still open through, I want to say early July is when that closes. So if you have comments, questions, concerns that you want to be considered in the record, you can still put your voice in for that. Direct environmental assessment. Coming back to this mission, though, once the Falcon 9 rocket takes off from Slick 4 East, after stage separation, the booster B1088 will follow that orange arc that you see there on your screen and target a touchdown on the drone ship referred to as, of course, I Still Love You. If successful, this will be the 135th good landing on that particular drone ship. It would also be SpaceX's 459th booster landing to date. SpaceX is working to certify its first stage boosters as well as its payload fairings for up to 40 missions apiece. The most flown payload fairing half, as recently referenced by SpaceX, launched and was recovered for its 30th time. Following atmospheric reentry, they splashed down in the waters of the Atlantic Ocean under the support of steerable parachutes. SpaceX says they save about $6 million per recovery effort. So, an important part of their business model to retrieve them as often as possible. Once down in the water, they'll be brought aboard one of the recovery vessels and then brought back into port, where SpaceX will make their observations, refurbishment, and turn them around for future flights. Taking a look at the weather outlook for Vandenberg right now, courtesy of the satellite view from the Goes West perspective. You can see night turning into day there on the west coast as this satellite loop goes through. Looks a little bit hazy off the coast of California there in the area of Vandenberg. So don't be overly shocked once we get our views of the Falcon 9 rocket coming up in less than 10 minutes if The term views of the Falcon 9 rocket may feel a little strained this morning, but we'll see what we can see, and hopefully, regardless of the visuals, there will be a good ascent for this mission. Sounds like fog may not be the issue today. So, as far as viewing the Falcon 9 rocket at the pad, should actually be pretty okay. Again, we'll get views of the Falcon 9 coming up in just about 8.5 minutes. With just a little more than 13 minutes on the clock remaining, I want to thank the little more than 1,700 of you who are with us live today. If you haven't hit that like button, you could do us a big favor and just click that for us. That'll allow more folks to find their way into this live launch coverage as the YouTube algorithm does its thing and recognizes the engagement. Your support makes these live launch opportunities possible, so we certainly appreciate you being here with us on a Sunday morning. And we hope you've had a good weekend so far. Gotten lots of rest and recovery, and you're ready to face whatever is ahead for your particular week. Talking about what's on board this Falcon 9 rocket as we come up on 12 minutes ahead of the planned launch of this Falcon 9. 26 Starlink satellites in total of the V2 Mini optimized variety. Today's launch will be the 51st of the year that carries Starlink satellites on board, of which 50 were dedicated Starlink missions. The Starlink 13-1 flight did carry 2 Starshield satellites, so we consider that a ride-share mission. Each of these optimized versions of the Starlink satellites, as you can see the difference in the weight, considerably lighter than their V2 Mini predecessors. With their wingspans unfurled, they have a width of about 100 feet or 30 meters. They use argon Hall effect thrusters for in-orbit maneuvering. They were built in Redmond, Washington, which is near Seattle, and they'll be deployed at about 183 miles or 295 kilometers in altitude at a 53-degree inclination. According to numbers tracked by friend of the channel, astronomer and expert orbital tracker Jonathan McDowell, there are currently a little more than 7,600 Starlink satellites on orbit as we speak. To date, there have been more than 8,800 Starlink satellites that have launched since SpaceX began putting its constellation on orbit. Of course, a competitor, or what is hoping to be a competitor to the Starlink constellation, is Amazon's Project Kuiper. Coming up this week as well, there is planned to be a launch of an Atlas V rocket from United Launch Alliance that is carrying the second operational batch of Kuiper satellites. That's set to lift off on June 13th from Space Launch Complex 41. Of course, we'll have live launch coverage of that as well when that rocket is ready to fly. Integration of the 27 Kuiper satellites encapsulated in the Atlas payload fairings happened just about a day or so ago. So that mission is progressing towards the pad as ULA is also working on a second vertical integration facility, or VIF, that will allow them to have a dual track heading out to pad 41. VIF A, as it's being called, A stands for Amazon, being created in order to support a higher cadence of launch for ULA with its Vulcan rocket. The company aiming for a cadence of at least 2 Vulcan launches per month is their current tracked goal, as they're working to bring VIF-A online. The first launch using that will actually be a Vulcan Kuiper mission, as stated by EULA President and CEO Tory Bruno. The original vertical integration facility, referred to as VIF-G, standing for government, will toggle between Atlas and Vulcan launches until, of course, the Atlas rocket is eventually retired. At least 6 Atlases are put on standby in order to support the remaining flights that have been booked as part of the Boeing Starliner program. If you haven't had a chance to head over to our website, spacelinenow.com, we've got an article up on the Boeing Starliner program, noting that the next launch, which may or may not be crewed, TBD on that, according to NASA, but that has been punted to no earlier than early 2026 as testing and assessments and possibly some re-engineering of the thruster system is undertaken both at the White Sands test facility out in New Mexico, as well as at the C3PF here at the Kennedy Space Center, which is the Commercial Crew and Cargo Payload Center, or facility, excuse me. Commercial Crew and Cargo Processing Facility is the acronym. So many acronyms covering space flight. 7.5 minutes on the clock, coming up to the start of the engine chill sequence for the Falcon booster. I want to thank channel member Gunnar S for 5 Spacefly Now memberships being gifted. Appreciate that generosity, Gunnar. And to our 5 newest gifted members, welcome aboard. Glad to have you with us. If you haven't already, be sure to thank Gunnar in the live chat, and we hope you decide to stick around with channel membership. As we're coming up on the final 5 minutes of this mission, I want to talk a little bit about the V2 Mini optimized Starlinks that are going to be launching today. Some good visuals were published in the 2024 progress report from SpaceX. These satellites reported to be more compact flat panel design that allows SpaceX to launch up to 29 of these in one go, though SpaceX has only launched a batch of 29 once, and that was from here in Florida. Unclear why they haven't done a full complement of 29 again, but more than likely we'll see that coming in the future.
Falcon 9 tanks are pressing for Stromback retract.
One last feature before we go to the Falcon 9 rocket itself. This is a look at a rendering of the Star Trekkers, these navigation cameras that other companies refer to as Star Trackers. Of course, SpaceX leaning on the fandom of both Star Trek and Star Wars with its uh, full complement of
Strongback retract has started.
both rockets and satellites. Star Trekker's obviously a nod to those fans of the final frontier and all those voyages. As you can see, pretty heavily fogged out there at Vandenberg. Not exactly what you call a Chamber of Commerce day, but also not terribly unexpected here. You can just barely make out the strong back. If you look starting from the bottom center of your screen, you can sort of see that large gray structure, which actually much clearer in this picture, starting to recline away from the Falcon 9 rocket. Again, the strong back leads back just about 13 degrees away from the vehicle. And here in Vandenberg, it stays in that position up to and through liftoff. Less than 30 seconds from now, we'll hear a call out for the Falcon 9 first stage LOX tank being full, as fueling is nearly complete on this rocket.
Stage 1 LOX load is complete.
And with that call, we're awaiting a similar call out regarding the vehicle's second stage. That should come about the 2-minute mark.
Stage 2 LOX load is complete.
And with that, the Falcon 9 is now fully loaded with 1 million pounds of propellant. Going to be quite tricky to make out here, but the ground gas closeouts should be starting momentarily.
Gas launch closeouts.
While quite hard to discern, this is the venting of any remaining liquid oxygen in the feed lines, helping to mitigate the risk of, oh, that's a good shot of the ground gas closeouts. Helps to mitigate the risk of lighting the strong back on fire when the Falcon 9 makes its descent.
Falcon 9 is in startup.
And with that good call out, we're just awaiting the SpaceX launch director to give their go for launch. Should be coming up in the next few seconds.
LD is go for launch.
And with that call out, we're going to go ahead and step back on our commentary until the other side of liftoff and listen along with you for these final 30 seconds of the countdown.
T minus 30 seconds. T minus 15 seconds. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Ignition. And liftoff of Falcon 9. Go SpaceX, go Starlink. Vehicle's pitching downrange.
Stage 1 propulsion is normal.
Falcon 9 is supersonic.
And a minute into this mission, a good ascent of the Falcon 9.
Max Q.
Rocket passing through the greatest point of aerodynamic stress on the vehicle. Shortly, the second stage engine will begin its thermal conditioning. May or may not hear a call out for that.
Power and telemetry nominal.
Impact chill started.
And good confirmation of the chill down of the Merlin vacuum engine, or the MVAC engine. We're coming upon a few events fairly quickly, back to back to back. We'll see first stage main engine cutoff, or MECO. That's coming up at about T plus 2 minutes and 24 seconds. That'll be followed by stage separation and then ignition of
nominal.
that Merlin vacuum engine. Good confirmation of a nominal trajectory. The payload fairings will be jettisoned just before the 3-minute mark.
Main engine cutoff.
Stage separation confirmed.
Impact ignition.
Good call-outs, good visuals from the SpaceX onboard cameras. Fairing deployment is coming up next. No call out, but good visual on the deployment of those payload fairings. You can see one falling back to Earth just beyond the Merlin vacuum engine
Fairing
nozzle.
separation confirmed.
Not a late call, but there you go. Coming up next will be the start of the entry burn on the Falcon booster. That'll take 3 of the engines out of the 9. That'll begin to slow the vehicle down quite noticeably. The first stage booster, B1088, has not quite begun its descent, although it is nearing its apogee in this mission. Looks like it'll top out at about 118 kilometers today. Nope, 119. Stand corrected. Once it makes its way back down to Earth, it will target a touchdown on the drone ship called Of Course I Still Love You, which is positioned out in the Pacific Ocean. Today's mission set to be the 370th drone ship landing for SpaceX and the 135th for that particular drone ship.
Both trajectories are nominal.
Confirmation of nominal trajectories as we're a little more than 5 minutes into the flight at this point. The start of the entry burn should be coming up now just under a minute from now. That burn lasting less than 30 seconds in duration.
Stage 1 entry burn startup.
Stage 1 FTS is safed.
Good call for the start of entry burn, as well as the flight termination system being safed on the booster stage. No longer needed at this point in the flight.
Stage 1 entry burn shutdown.
Coming up next will be the start of the landing burn, which will happen just before the 8-minute mark, which will call upon just one of the engines, the center one, to support a touchdown attempt on Of Course I Still Love You.
Stage 1 transonic.
Stage 2 FTS is safed.
First stage booster now traveling below the speed of sound as it prepares for its landing attempt.
Stage 1 landing burn.
Stage 2 has entered terminal guidance.
Stage 1 landing leg deploy. Stage 1 landing confirmed.
And a good touchdown on the drone ship. Of Course I Still Love You. And marked the 8th trip to space and back for B-1088.
MVAC shutdown.
Nominal orbit insertion.
And with a good confirmation of a shutdown of the Merlin vacuum engine, as well as the call up for a nominal orbit insertion. Always happy to hear that. The upper stage of the Falcon 9 rocket will now coast until about T plus 52 minutes and 30 seconds. There will then be a brief 2-second burn on that upper stage engine, which will help to circularize the orbit and then allow the Starlink satellites to be deployed at T plus 1 hour, 1 minute, and 24 seconds after liftoff. And with a good launch and a good landing of the booster B-1088, let's go ahead and take a moment to pop over to our mission stats as they currently stand. But before we do, want to thank channel member Chuck Close for a very generous $25 super chat. Really appreciate that, Chuck. Thank you for your support today. As you mentioned, today's flight was the 8th for Falcon booster B-1088. This marks SpaceX's 487th Falcon 9 launch to date, the 70th of the year so far. This is the company's 144th orbital launch within the last 365 days, the 130th from Slick 4 East, and the 198th overall orbital launch from that particular pad. Moving on, here's a look at the bar chart as it currently stands. Should say actually June 10th, of course, today's June 8th. I'm projecting forward to AX4. My apologies. Moving on to some recovery stats. This was the 135th landing of a drone ship on, of course, I Still Love You, marking the 370th drone ship landing for SpaceX and the 459th booster landing overall. Finally, with some industry stats, today's flight was the 24th orbital launch of the year from California, the 74th from U.S. soil, the 81st from a U.S. rocket company, and the 126th orbital launch attempt from around the globe. There have been 3 orbital launch mishaps so far on the year, and here's where our pie chart currently stands. U.S. continuing to lead with 81 launches so far, China with 33, Russia with 6, India and Europe with 2, Japan and Germany with 1 apiece. You can always head over to our website, spaceflightnow.com, click on the Launch Schedule tab to be notified when future orbital flights are coming up. Of course, we've got a big one just right around the corner, popping back over one last time to Historic Launch Complex 39A as SpaceX and Axiom Space are preparing to launch the AX4 mission from that pad using that rocket you see standing tall there. A brand new Crew Dragon, the 5th and final to enter into service according to SpaceX, sitting up top of the Falcon 9 stack. Currently unnamed, that Dragon capsule, just known right now by its tail number C213. Once upon a time, C213 was set to fly the Crew 9 mission for NASA, then changed to Crew 10, and then eventually swapped to AX4. So this will be the first time that a private astronaut mission has the distinction of naming a SpaceX Dragon. And assuming SpaceX is able to stick to its current plan of having this be the 5th and final Dragon, it will be the only private astronaut mission to name a Dragon capsule. What you're looking at here on your screen is the countdown to our next live stream coverage milestone. Of course, this is for the static fire test of this particular rocket. Currently, T-minus 2 hours, 47 minutes, 41 seconds and counting. And for those curious, no, we're not going to do a 3-hour live stream for a static fire test. This is just to give you an idea of when the anticipated ignition of those 9 Merlin engines is expected. We will have a dedicated stream on that, though. It'll start 30 minutes ahead of ignition as we have confirmation of the start of fueling. So be sure to turn on notifications for that, ring that bell icon, and you won't be left in the lurch. If you happen to step away and are not paying super close attention to the time, you can get a notification on your phone or laptop, desktop, however you like to watch Spaceflight Now and other videos on YouTube. And join us back here for our static fire coverage, as we'll have much more to say on the AX4 mission then. I want to thank our Spaceflight Now editor, Stephen Young, for running the technical operations of the broadcast today for the launch of the Starlink 15-8 mission from Vandenberg out in California. Also want to thank our moderators in the live chat who have been helping us out today. No, Rick Donner's been holding it down in the live chat, and of course my chat is frozen, so I'm not able to see if there are any other mods. I'll call an audible and ask Stephen if you can see any other mods who've been helping out today. Not seeing any at the moment, so want to give a big thanks to Rick. Oh, and Aussie Space Girl has also been with us as well. Appreciate the both of you. Big thanks to our channel member community, and most importantly, thanks to you for wherever you've been watching from today. Again, we'll see you back here for the upcoming static fire test of AX4 and look forward to welcoming you back as well for the launch of, excuse me, the AX4 mission, currently targeting June 10th at 8:22 a.m. Eastern, 12:22 UTC. That'll be followed shortly thereafter, if the schedule holds, by the launch of a batch of Starlink satellites from Pad 40. For all of us here at Spaceflight Now, I'm Will Robinson Smith. Remember, be good to yourselves, be good to others. We will see you next time, folks. And until then, bye-bye.